Ladies and gentlemen, today we get the opportunity to learn from Trevor Barney. Trevor is a friend of mine. He's also my cousin. He's the current branch manager at the Dallas Fort Worth office. Trev's a sturdy pillar to lean on. He does a great job of supporting the salesmen, the technicians, and all of the family and friends of BRD Pest Solutions. We're excited to learn from him and see his different takes on pest control, sales, leadership, and beyond. Thanks for being on, brother.
Yeah.
Pleasure to have you here today. Jumping into it kind of from a cold start, let's back up. Origin story. So me and Trevor go way back, a literal day one. I used to take care of him when he was in the crib. No, I'm kidding.
Something like that.
Yeah. No, Trevor's my Trevor's a leader here at BRD. He's also my cousin. We used to hang out and go on Model A rides when we were younger. For those of you who don't know what a Model A is, it's an old what do you call that, car?
Yeah, it's an old Ford.
There we go. But Trevor has a wealth of knowledge to share with us here today. Trevor started out in sales right after high school, selling for, what was the company called?
Weed Man.
Selling for Weed Man. Selling the good old weed plans door to door. And then he also, shortly after, has been involved in a number of, would you call that general contracting? Or
Yeah, general contracting, different construction businesses, and eventually ran my own business where I was doing sales and running the business and all that. So
cool. And also now has a plethora of knowledge in after running a massive team out here in Dallas, Fort Worth for the summer, learning the ins and outs with the technicians and the sales reps.
Yeah, it's been an experience, but it's been fun. We're learning.
That's good. And well, just kind of, hopping into it, walk us back, where you're from, kind of your origin story, and then we'll kind of hop into the different topics and stuff like that.
Okay. From Utah, from good old Payson, Utah. I, like Dawson said, got out of high school, did door-to-door sales for a short time, not too long. Did an LDS mission in St. Louis. That was a good learning experience. After that, right after my mission, I started working for a small printing company. Worked there for 6 or 7 months and made my way up until I was kind of managing the department. That was my first kind of management experience. That was a good kind of icebreaker. Learning how to manage people, learning how to do sales, and a lot of other things. After that's when I got into the contracting. So and I did that for 4 or 5 years up until I came to work for BRD. I've basically lived in Utah my whole life up until, February? We moved out to Dallas. So we're out in Dallas now and loving it so far.
Love it. So kind of hopping into manager. So you were it was a printing company. What was it?
It's Current Print Marketing was the company name.
So what are some things that managing people? It's pretty universal. You it's learning the hearts and minds of how to get a room to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
What were some things that you learned back then when you were just managing a couple people that could probably carry over really well to a summer sales team lead, a branch manager, or to anyone that's just helping out or supporting someone in a leadership role?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I'd say at that position, jumping in, is right off the bat I was managing 3 people. One of them I trained myself, so he already kind of looked up to me. The other 2 though, one had already worked for the company for 10 plus years and should be manager, but she wasn't interested, and so she knew more than me. And she was good about it, and then the other one was a friend of mine who actually trained me, but he was going to school, and so that's why he really wasn't available to be manager. And so right off the bat, I was managing people in a sense that had more knowledge than me, that had more experience in the field and within the company. So I had to learn really quickly that when you manage people, it's not just a blanket, one key fits all type thing. Like, you have to customize it, because with the one employee who'd been there, she's twice my age and had been doing that for a long time. I couldn't just go in on day one and start telling her what to do and bossing around. You have to be very smart about the way that you present things and do it. Otherwise, you just lose respect from people. So I think it's the same with sales. Especially when you're managing a sales team, you're going to have salesmen that are all across the board. Just in Dallas this year, we had a lot of kids from Utah, we had a lot of kids from Texas, from San Antonio, some from Dallas, that come, from different backgrounds, different upbringings, and you really have to know the people and learn what's going to be the best way to help them succeed, because what may help, one salesman that just kind of gets out there and gets going, and you don't really have to monitor. Like, you try that same tactic with someone who needs a little bit more motivation, and it's probably not going to work too well for them. So really customizing to each employee, I guess a plan or a strategy to help them is one big thing that I had to learn quickly within that company to be successful.
Well, I think it transitions big into what we do. I mean, any artificial system that you have to create to help increase production at your job, it needs to be like just that, pushing everyone forward. And I think a lot of times what I'll see managers make a big mistake on is they'll set up some system and then the entire room falls deaf ears to it. Mm-hmm. And or they get lost. And so finding new and creative ways of continuing to communicate to people is big. No matter how old you get, whether you're 1 or 99, people need things reiterated to them, and they need them brought in a new light in a new way, but still the same old tried and true principles.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the cool things of the managers. You get the opportunity to be creative that way and figure out how to make it fun, but also bring it to the hearts of those people.
Exactly.
So, I feel like you're an interesting breed because you have you have hybrid. You have management skills and you also have a lot of sales skills, and I feel like you lean on both at times. But where did you? Who were some of the big salesmen that taught you first year sales skills, and who's been a big example for management?
One person really comes to mind, Butch, who, for anyone who doesn't know, is mine and Dawson's grandpa. He was a great salesman for years. I think he's been on the podcast, hasn't he?
Hey, he was on the pod. You gotta go give that one a listen.
Yeah, so go give that one a listen. He was amazing salesman, so life insurance for years was, very, very top tier of what he did. So he definitely gave me a lot of pointers. More than anything, just growing up, hearing his stories, hearing him talk about, focusing on what's going to be the most, I remember one story that he told me. This one thing that's kind of always stuck with me. He told me that he had he was selling life insurance. He was doing his own lead setting. He was doing all his own contracts. He was doing basically the only thing that his assistant would do would answer phone calls and try to get some pretty cold leads semi-warm, and then he would try to, set the lead up and then close it. And he said that he was selling a decent amount, doing okay, and then he got to a point where the company brought someone in to basically analyze everything he was doing and to correct what he was doing wrong. And he said, first week the guy came in and watched him and then told him, all right, from now on, I don't want you doing any more contracts. Let your secretary do them. And first thing he said, oh, I can't do that because what if she makes a mistake and I lose a deal? And he gave a bunch of excuses, reasons why he couldn't. The guy said, just do it. I promise you, other people do it. It can be done. This is what the top performers do. He said, okay. Taught his secretary how to do all the contracts. So all of a sudden, hours were freed up of his time to do more closing, do more lead setting. Did that for a while. The numbers increased. The guy came back in, watched what he was doing, and said, all right, now quit lead setting. Let your secretary do it. Or hire a second secretary. Quit lead setting. He said, oh, I can't do that. There's going to be so many leads that fall through the cracks because she's not as good as I am. And lots of different excuses. The guy just said, fine, just do it. Just trust me, just do it. he said he kept doing that, picking apart things to when he finally got to the point to when for 8 hours a day, he was closing. That's all he was doing. And he said he basically doubled his sales at that time, which, you know, I've been kind of in and out of sales, and I've had a lot of jobs that were partial sales, part management, part, you know, but that's one thing that I've always focused on when I'm focusing on the sales part is what's the one thing I need to focus on that's going to be most productive? Because you can fill 8 hours in a day, you know, just door-to-door sales. It's been a long time since I've done it, but you can easily spend a long time looking at an iPad, putting in door pins, walking slowly, going to the gas station to get a drink. But the amount of times you're on a doorstep knocking, the amount of time in a day you're actually, just as, you know, the analogy goes with your what is it, your fishing line in the water, you know, the more time you're actually doing what's the most effective, most crucial part of closing really is what's going to increase your sales, what's going to increase. So Butch is one that's always, at least on the sales side, to answer your question, that's the story that always comes to mind. He's always been very knowledgeable and has taught me a lot in that side. As far as the management...
Can I say something on that?
Yeah.
I think it's super important. A lot of times the biggest mistake I see in management is people, they have like let's say there's 10 things to do in a day, and number one is the thing you should do almost all day long, and all the other ones are somewhat important. You need to keep that one like 80% of your time, because if not, all of a sudden you're doing things that just don't move the needle. Mm-hmm. And be careful, and I honestly think everyone would benefit from like taking out a pen and paper and being like, hey, where am I currently like spending a lot of my time, my energy on things that actually don't move the needle? Mm-hmm. And I think like getting an outside perspective, that's one of the cool things about that story, is being like, hey, let's audit this. Let's figure out what actually needs to happen and what doesn't. And I think asking around for a third party is really key in that, because you can't really see yourself fully. We all think we can,
yeah,
but we're all partially blind to how we think and act.
Oh, no, it's 100% true. Yeah. And like you just said, I think that same principle applies to management. You know, it's just like you said, you can easily spend all day long just looking at a computer screen and scrolling through emails, but you know, if you've got an objective that this is a metric I need to hit, and you're not focusing 80% of your time on it, you're probably not going to hit it. You know, it's so easy to waste so much time. So I definitely say Butch has been, you know, someone I've really looked up to and always asked advice on. So as well as I have a lot of other family and friends that have helped me along the way.
Cool. What's a lesson that you've like, and well, I think we all have these. There's some lessons that are timeless and they never fade. But what's a lesson you had to learn over and over again that you're like, this one's important, remember this? Like, for example, like for me, like one I've had to learn over and over and over again is like patience with like other people and not overstepping too much on like what their job responsibility is in order to help them kind of continue to grow. Yeah. But naturally my personality is like, I want to fix it. I want to get into that wall. Yeah. But it's not always been the case. Is there anything like that where you're like, this is something a lesson that I've learned and it's important?
Definitely. The one thing I'd say that I've had to stop back and think, and this kind of ties into what we just talked about, is really focusing on what's most important, what's the most productive use of your time. Like when I ran my own business, it was really easy to just to be like, oh, we got to get this project done. I got to go do these bids, and I got to get these bids out. And in my mind, I justified not really sitting down and tracking my expenses, tracking, you know, how much time we're spending on jobs, am I quoting accurately, a lot of that stuff, because in my mind, I just thought, well, I'm charging what everyone else charges. As long as I do enough jobs, I do them quick enough, like it'll all work out. But then you get to the end of the month and you're like, oh man, where did that $5,000 at Home Depot go? I was like, what tools were I buying? What, you know? So I've had to learn that lesson multiple times of you really have to stop and pause and look at, you know, like you said, pen and paper, what you do all day long, how many hours are you staring at a screen, how many hours are you actually out doing what's going to be most productive. And it's been a lesson that I've had to learn multiple times, and I'd like to say I'm to the point where I don't have to learn it again, but it's kind of an always an ongoing progression.
It's kind of like life, and you're juggling. You have so many different things, and a lot of times what I'll find is once you notice that a ball is dropped, that's when it's time to get back on it. The worst thing that I've done is like sometimes I'm juggling and I see one of the balls that I've missed, like I dropped on the floor. And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going, and then what happens is eventually you peer over again and you see it, and you're like, holy crap, it's become a huge problem.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned in life is you're going to occasionally drop something, but once you first kind of notice it, learning to quickly pick it up, that's when you're going to get to some scary new levels.
Yeah.
And grow.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
So, as far as like things that you've read or books you've listened to or people like, what are some things that you're like, oh, dude, this would be beneficial for anyone in sales, management, leadership?
One book, going back to Butch, one book I think he gave all of us, all of his grandkids when we were 11, 12 was Think and Grow Rich. And it's been a minute since I've read the book, but one story that's always stuck with me is, hopefully I'm not misquoting it, but it's basically a chapter in a story that talks about like 3 feet from gold or 3 feet from oil or something along those lines. It's basically a story of, I think it's oil, of some people that went out west and were drilling for oil or gold or I don't remember, and they were doing really good for a while, and then they hit a stump and they got to a point to where it all dried out and they didn't have anything, and they basically took all their equipment and just were like, well, we're going to cut our losses, sold it to some guy for a couple $100, like pennies on the dollar. He came in, bought it, paid an expert to come and do like a geographical whatever, and they were 3 feet off. Like if they just would have moved their drills 3 feet over, they would have, and that guy ended up making millions. So that book and that story has always resonated with me because it applies to sales, management, whatever you do in life. In sales, door-to-door sales, you get out there for a summer, your first week sucks. Your second week sucks. Third week, you kind of start getting the hang of it, but it's still like, man, people are mean, and it's so easy in those first couple of weeks to just be like, nah, I don't think this is for me. I think I'm a computer science major instead, and to quit and go work at Wendy's. Or same with management. It's so easy to get to roadblocks or get to certain hard situations with employees or just with achieving certain goals. It's so easy to just be like, this isn't me. This isn't for me. And to cut yourself short, where really if you persevere, you push, usually by the time you're ready to quit, you're just like 1 or 2 no's away from that success. And that's where majority of people quit and give up, is when they're just so close. So I love that book. It's been a huge, factor in my life that's helped me to get to where I am. And yeah, I think that's definitely a story that's resonated with me. Another one that comes to mind is Dale Carnegie's How to Influence People.
Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes. I love that book. I definitely need to reread it because there's a lot of lessons in there that is on. I guess it applies to the sales and management, just about reading people, in like we talked about in the beginning. Getting on a personal level with people. I love the story in that. And this is all me paraphrasing because I can't remember details, but it talks about a CEO of a business who knew the name of every single person on the production floor. And he'd walk through, and as he'd walk through, he'd talk, oh, hey, how's your son's birthday? Isn't it today? And he knew everyone. And that they said that the culture there was it was amazing. Like night and day difference than you walk into any other big factory back in the day, and the owner he was yelling at their managers, and their managers yelling at the rest of the people, and the people on the production floor just felt like they were just getting yelled at all day long, and no one knew them, no one understood them. And I think that is a huge lesson, not only in management, but in sales too, because if you're on a doorstep and you're just like reciting the pitch and you're just saying the same thing over and over again, but those salesmen who really can get on a personal level with people, like 90% of the time people are buying from you. They're not buying from not that they're completely 100% sold on the product or on the company. They really like the salesman, and so that's a huge lesson I've had to learn in my life.
I love it. Well, and to go on the name thing, that one's big. When I was at the MTC, well, actually out of the MTC, when I was on my mission, Russell Nelson came to speak, and one of the cool things is in the middle of his talk, when he was speaking to all the missionaries, and for those of you who don't know, it's basically like there was hundreds of people there to hear this person speak, and I'd never met him, and neither had many people in the stands, but he started calling out to people in the mission, be like so and so and so and so and so and so, just mid talk, just like full name, like. Wow. And what was cool to me about that is I'm like, oh no, here's a guy that's actually taken a lot of time and energy into figuring out about each person. And I think every leader could learn something from that, where it's like lead and love one by one. And everyone's name in that book, it says a person's name's the sweetest word to them in any language. And so figuring out, like, it's a great way to call people to attention. It's a great way for people to feel warm and loved. So I love that, remembering names, using them. And then I also think just like getting really good at one-by-one love is huge.
Yeah.
So as far as like some of the pitfalls, like a lot of the guys listening to this are sales guys. So they're hopping on and they're trying to figure out how to maximize their summer. As far as like, what are some things that you've seen salesmen say or do that maybe can be a pitfall to them later or down the road? Or where are some things that you're like, if a salesman avoids this or doesn't do this, it typically leads to this?
So one thing I really saw this summer that made, I think, a huge difference for one salesman. Can we name salesman on here for good things?
Yeah, as long as it's good, yeah.
So Cade, Cade. Most of you guys know Cade.
Yeah, he was on today. He was on today, actually.
Oh, good. He was one of the top producing in our branch this year. And the one thing that I noticed from Cade, two things. Cade never talked negative about anyone or anything. Even times where he got a little down, he would just be like, okay, and then just, he'd cheer right up and move along. Like that guy had very little negativity, if ever. So one thing when I hear, because I had a lot of salesmen come in my office and talk to me about, hey, why did this person cancel? Hey, why did this thing go through? And a lot of them would get really down. Cade would get down too, but by the time he left my office, he was cheerful, happy. He had a way of being resilient and pushing off the negativity, which I think is huge. The other thing that, that's kind of like what he would say. He would always be very positive. The other thing that he would do is Cade was always the first person out the door after the sales meeting. Like, he made sure to come early to talk to me so he didn't have to do it after. And the moment that meeting was done, that guy walked right out and headed straight out. And even if you had to cut him area or something, he'd be like, send it to me while I'm on my way. I've got an hour and a half drive. You got time. Like, he was out on the doors. Where I'd see other guys, I'd get text. Cade would be texting me. Meeting would be over at 11, and Cade would only be 15 minutes on his drive out there. He'd text me, hey, can you open a route? I'm like, you're not even in the area yet. And he was on it. Where other guys, they wouldn't text me until 2 or 3:30. Oh, can you open a route? And I'm like, man, Cade's already got 2 or 3 hours on you out on the doors. And then people are like, what's he doing? How's he doing this? And in my mind, I thought he's not negative. He's always positive. He's working hard, and he's just going for it. Like, nothing's going to hold him back. And so I really think that there's a lot that goes into sales. There's a lot with sales psychology. There's a lot with habits, with a lot of those things. But the one thing that really impressed me with Cade this summer is he just went after it. Nothing was going to hold him back. There was no excuses. If he encountered a problem, he'd call you, he'd call me, and he'd say, how do I fix this? What do I do? Like, there just was no problem he couldn't solve. And so that was a big lesson to me too, because there's days too where I'm, oh man, this is going wrong, and then Kate comes in and he had 3 cancels that morning. He's still smiling and happy, and he's going to go sell 9 more today. And so I think that's huge. And for any salesman listening, just imitating that energy of being the first one in and the first one out the door to go sell and the last one in at the end of the night, like, just that energy brings so much power, because when you're doing that and when you're so focused on that, there's no time for playing on your phone or sitting at a gas station. Like, if you have a goal and you're like, nah, I'm going to be out here, I'm going to be a good 10 hours out on the doors, or 8 hours, or whatever it pencils out to be, your mind space is going to be, I got to make sales, I got to do this. And that's really what it was for Cade, and it showed. He did amazing. And so same with Oakland. He's another one of our top producing. He was only in Dallas for a little bit, but same with him. When he was there, he told everyone, hey, meetings are at 9:30, because he wanted to be on the doors by noon. He didn't want to be getting out to area at 2 o'clock. And that work ethic, if you look at anyone who's top producing, they're always, they go after and get it.
I love it. Brian Tracy has a book. He's a sales leader and coach, and it's called Eat That Frog. And basically the whole concept of the book is to do the hardest thing at the beginning of the day, And if you do the hardest thing you have to do in the day at the very beginning, it makes the rest of the day so much easier and better. And I see that happen time and time again. People will push off emotionally like a thing. They're like, oh, I'll do all these other small things and then I'll get to the big thing. Mm-hmm. And what happens a lot of times, or what I see is people carry that weight of the big responsibility that's due the whole day with them, and it's hard to do anything else. It's hard to emotionally engage in those other small tasks you have to do. Yeah. So learning to do things like both Kate and Oakland of like, I'm just going to go out and hit that first door, because that's the hardest door is that first door you're getting out and making it happen. Sometimes it's just getting out the office door, as you've seen. And so I echo that. I think it's just really important to kind of eat that frog and get things done early. Yeah. So as far as like on technician side and stuff like that, where are some pitfalls that you think a technician could fall into? We have techs that watch this podcast as well. Mm-hmm. Where are some things that you're like, oh, if I see X, this typically produces this kind of technician? What are some tips or tricks that you're like, this is good? And also, what are some things that, like, I think salesmen often really focus in on technicians. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you've seen salesmen do that really kind of brings the technicians on their side? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, there's a couple things, and I think it's really small things help. I remember one time, Chyler this summer, he put in the notes on one account that there was really high E's, and he's like, something along the lines that you're probably gonna have to stand on your tippy toes to reach these wasp nests, but if you can get them, like, here's my number, text me, I'll Venmo you for lunch today. Like, and that's something small. It's nothing crazy, but like, I'm sure that technician was like, oh man, like this guy's really looking at, like, he knew this was going to be a hard job. Like, he knew it had a big shop with high eaves, and it was going to, like, simple stuff. And I'm not saying every salesman needs to buy a technician lunch, but there's really small things like that. Same with Tyler. Tyler's told me that when he used to sell, that he said he always wanted the technicians to like him, so they'd take care of his accounts. And he's like, anytime I'd see him out in the field, I'd roll up on him, and if I had a water bottle or something, I'd be giving a water bottle, or I'd just be telling, how's your day going? Simple stuff like that, I think, goes a long ways. Just because the technicians are in the same boat as salesmen. You're out at least in Texas, in the Texas heat, it's 100-degree weather, you're sweating like crazy, and you may get to a property that's a large property, and you've got a certain amount of time to do it, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to make this work, and if I'm late, then I got to get, I'm going to be out late tonight, and it's really easy to kind of get in that, and all it really takes is someone with high energy and positivity to really kind of pull you out and be like, oh yeah, life's not that bad. So I think that's huge, just bringing a positive energy. Other than that, like, really, I think that really helps is when salesmen are just really detailed with notes and with expectations with customers, with technicians of what's going to happen. That really helps. That way we're not getting into missing appointments because their house took too long because we only thought it'd be a 30-minute service instead of an hour and stuff like that. But for the most part, all that stuff works out. But I really think that more than anything, just having good energy. It's really easy on both sides, technicians to get upset with salesmen if they think that, properties are too big, it should have been sold for more, and it should have taken long. Or same with salesmen thinking, that technician really didn't do as good of a job as I wish he would have. Really easy on both sides, but honestly, I think the cure for all that is just to have, like, good high energy and just be like, stuff happens, let's make the most of it, let's not focus on that one bad thing. I mean, me and you talked about this multiple times this summer. You can let one small thing that's very insignificant ruin your entire day, a day that you could have produced so much that day in sales and management, whatever you're doing. You focus on one little minimal, just like you said, sometimes it's the weight of the most important thing. Other times it's something that's not even important, and you let it bring you down, and then it's kind of like a snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's going to knock down a house. Where sometimes all it is just being happy, having good energy. And we had a lot of really good. Zach is one that I really liked this summer. I think he's been on the podcast too. He always had high energy. Like he just, every time he'd come into my office, is, how you doing? How's it going? And there'd be days where I'd be, making phone calls I didn't like to make, but Zach would come in and just put a smile on your face. So I think that more than anything, just bringing positive energy is huge.
100%. So now let's get into a funny story. Is there anything like what's like maybe a moment that you're like that really made me like bust up laughing from? I mean, it was a wild summer, a big bunch of experiences. Anything in particular like that was pretty hilarious.
Let me think about it.
Whether with technicians or salesmen or
Oh, I'm sure there's a million. One thing that's coming to my mind, this isn't really, I don't even know if this is mine to share, but it made me laugh. Yesterday I was in the office in the annex and I was looking, and they have a bunch of funny quotes hung up, and one of them's a screenshot from a customer service rep where a customer texted in about something, and he thought he was texting someone else back, and basically the customer said something like, oh yeah, we're going to need to reschedule, and he responded, oh yeah, head over and we'll get lunch and go hang out, and it's like, this whole personal thing, and it's funny that like the environment in the office, in the annex, instead of everyone like, dogging on him, it's like, oh, let's print that out and put it up on the wall. That's hilarious. That really made me laugh. As far as the summer goes, I'm trying to think.
And wait, let me back up. So they were saying like the office rep was texting to reschedule.
The customer texted in saying they need to and it looked like it was a customer that was not necessarily super angry, but definitely a little, hey, this shouldn't have happened, a little tense. And he thought he was texting a friend about coming over to do homework and get lunch or something like that, and he accidentally texted
the rep did.
Yeah, the customer service rep texted the customer instead of his friend, and sorry, I should explain that better, but yeah, anyways, and I'm sure the customer probably texted back and said sorry or unsent it or something, but that made me laugh, and I really liked the energy of throwing it up on the wall and giving everyone a little chuckle instead of being like, hey man, that's unprofessional, you can't, instead of it being that kind of tear someone down, it's like, mistakes happen, and kind of make it something light. So that definitely made me laugh. I'm sure there was a million things this summer, but I honestly don't really have too much coming to mind of funny things.
Okay, well, if you could leave one thing with everyone, just across the board, from sales to operations, what's some advice you could leave like the whole company as you're like, hey, this is one thing that I think is key to us all servicing and working together at a high level?
One thing I've been pondering on a lot that I think I'll leave with everyone that I think is crucial across the board, no matter what you do, no matter what stage you are in life, is always having an open mind. Because I see it with salesmen, technicians, management, myself. It's that you fall short somewhere, and it's so easy just to be like, it's because of this or that or what, and just to make a bunch of excuses, and it's not my fault. Where really, if you just embrace it, whether it's my fault or not, it happened, and what do I need to do to fix it? And you kind of take the emotions out of it. Like, I'm not going to feel bad. I'm just going to like fix the problem. I think there's so much power in that. Because it's so much in life, we stumble, we fall, we make a mistake, and it's so easy just to be like, to get on yourself and either say, get upset, this wasn't my fault, there, X, Y, and Z happened, and that's why, this happened, it was out of my control, it's not my fault. Or it's easy to get angry or just to blame, like I said, just to, step back and it's not my fault. But there's no progress in that. There's no progress. And the same thing with, salesmen. It's easy to look at someone like Kate or Oakland, who are top producers, and be like, they just have this personality. When really, they didn't. Like, when Oakland started, when Kate started, I mean, they're phenomenal salesmen, but they still had their tough summers in the beginning. They still had their tough weeks. Same with management. It's so easy just to be like, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, and that's why our numbers are this way, or that's why we're falling short here, where, you can play the blame game all day long, but all that does is just extend out the time to when you really can start fixing the problem. Where if you just keep an open mind and say, you know what, I probably did mess that up, or I probably did do that wrong, what can I fix, what can I change, and you only focus on what you can change, not what anyone else can change, or not what anyone else needs to change, because at the end of the day, you're only in control of yourself. I think there's so much power in that. And as human beings, it's not natural. It's pretty uncomfortable to do that. You naturally want to just show that you're not to blame, you're not, and push it off on someone else. But there's no growth, there's no progress in that at all. Keeping an open mind and just saying, okay, what are the steps to get past this, to overcome this, to not let this happen again? What do I need to improve on? And then just executing on it and taking the emotion out of it is huge.
I love it, dude. I'm also gonna let us end with that. That was great. So keep an open mind. Trev, thank you for being on. Thanks for leading and loving and helping everybody out in the company. So we appreciate all that you do. And Bird Nation, over and out.